So, hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond Borders Higher Ed Edition. I'm Almas, your host for today. And once again, today we are diving deep into a topic that is shaping the aspirations of thousands of Indian students and families, which is studying in Europe, with a special focus on Germany today. So, over the last few years, we have seen a noticeable shift. Students are looking beyond the conventional and traditional destinations and exploring opportunities that offer academic quality, affordability, global exposure, and long-term career prospects. To help us unpack this landscape, I'm joined by someone who works very closely with the students navigating these choices. It's a pleasure to welcome Mr. Sahil Narang. He's the founder of Edu Sky Global. Sahil, thank you for joining us today. So let's just begin with the bigger picture here. Over the last few years, what are the biggest shifts you have seen in the study abroad aspirations of Indian students?
First of all, thank you for having me. I think in the last few years, the landscape has changed significantly. We have seen a paradigm shift in the way students are thinking about overseas education. So one of the major shifts I see is the why for the students. Why do I need to go abroad to study? And what do I aim to gain from it? So, things like, I think what has changed is the why. Of earlier, students used to be more interested in the prestigious destinations, or maybe following where some of their family members have gone in the past, and some legacy destinations. They've always been like the UK, US, Canada, Australia, and they were very happy just going to that destination, fulfilling that sort of aspirational value, that dream of
Exactly.
I'll go to Canada one day, I'll go to the UK one day.
Yeah.
And that was about it. There was not much thinking beyond that. Okay, what will happen while I'm studying? What will happen after I study? So what I see in the past years is that students have become a lot more aware. They have become a lot more strategic in their purpose for an education abroad. So most of the students now are very strategic when they look for overseas education, and they are mostly very outcome focused, I would say. So it's not just about the input that, okay, I'm going to study in this country and that's going to be very, very, I'm going to have a great experience and I'll get that tag, you can say, that I'm studying in the US or I'm studying in Canada. But they've become very much outcome focused, that what will happen after my education. So I think that's a very big shift. So there have been surveys done in 2025 where they've actually found that 77% of Indian students, they consider employability as the main reason why they want to study abroad, and they look at long-term career progression. So it's not just the older factors anymore. They are very, very detailed in terms of where they want to go and why they want to go because of those reasons.
So it is very safe to say that shift is majorly driven by the changing global opportunities for the students.
Absolutely, absolutely. So students have, there is so much awareness in today's day and age. So students they get a lot of information, and it's very easy to connect with people who are already there, who are already studying abroad, who are working abroad. It's a click away.
Yeah.
So students are very focused, and they have all these tools at their disposal. For example, Reddit communities, Quora, you have LinkedIn, you have, you can connect with alumni, you can connect with current students. It's very easy. So they get so much information, and then they're focused on where they're going to get. A very important factor is now the ROI. So
Exactly.
decisions have become very purposefully focused around the return that they're going to get, and what kind of costs as tuition fee compared to the employment remunerations they can get after they finish their degree. So that's become very important, and the destination has taken a bit of a backseat when it comes to this.
So that naturally brings us to Europe, especially Germany, which is where your forte. So, which seems to be at the center of a lot of the conversations lately. You know, moving abroad to Germany for further education. So, what is the thriving, growing interest among Indian students to move to Germany? And when the students compare to destinations like US, UK, or let's say Canada, what makes Germany stand out today?
Okay. Yes, I think Germany has become a very, very important destination for studying in the global landscape. There are many factors that have influenced this over the past years. So I think the biggest factor is, very simply put, is affordability. So affordability, because now students have begun to understand with the growing awareness that you don't have to spend as much money as they were in the past years going to these top four destinations. They call them the big four, like US, Canada, Australia,
Exactly.
and the UK. So students have understood the fact that they don't need to spend that much money to get a world-class education. So Germany, most of the public universities, they offer free education. So they do not charge a tuition fee. So this is huge when it comes to, when we talk about our biggest cohort of students are coming from middle class families in India. So it really makes a lot of financial sense for the parents or the students themselves, if they're self-funding, to go to a destination where they don't have to take huge education loans and they don't have to sell properties to go and study abroad. It's not required anymore. So that's, I think, one of the biggest reasons. Secondly, Germany has a very prominent position when it comes to the global economy and the European economy. So it's known as the powerhouse of Europe. It's known as the biggest driver of the European economy because since forever they have been very strong in their manufacturing, in their services. So they have a very strong economy which creates a lot of opportunities for students, especially in sectors like engineering, automotive, IT, data science, healthcare, renewable energy. So all these sectors, to name a few, are really very economically sound when it comes to Germany. There are a lot of top German companies. There's a lot of research being done in Germany. There's a lot of funds that the government is putting in for research, for development. So all this, I think, is leading it to become a very interesting destination for students.
When we're talking about all these things going, in and around Germany, so from your experience, what kind of student tends to thrive in Germany? If you're talking from the Indian students and families perspective, so what kind of student will thrive in Germany?
I think a student who would thrive in Germany is pretty much what kind of a student would thrive in general when they leave home and they go to a foreign country. It's not very different, I would say, because you need the basic consciousness and skills. You need to be very conscious about what you're doing. You can't follow the crowd. You can't be just following the mob. Okay, my 4 friends are doing this program, so I will also go for this program. That kind of mentality will not get you anywhere, whether it's Germany or whether it's US or anywhere. So I would say that consciousness, as in every part of life, consciousness in your decision making is very, very important. Now, how can we break it down into practical terms? So being conscious about what your profile is, what your education background is, and then selecting the course and the subject stream accordingly. Number one, which you are interested in. Number 2, where there is a demand. So these things have to be strategically thought of. Second is, you need to, once you get to Germany, you need to make the right moves. So I would say language is very, very important. So we need a student who's motivated to learn the language.
So we'll be coming to that part later on,
Yes,
the language
yes.
and everything.
So I would say, just to add about what kind of student would thrive is basically what I said, a conscious approach and a driven approach to the outcome.
And the interest that you have in
Yes,
that
yes.
country
So-
and in that particular university you are moving to.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So of course, we have discussed the interest part, but understanding the admission process, where many students begin to feel overwhelmed at times because there's a lot of information that is going around. a lot of things to take in. So when it comes to applying to the universities in Germany, what should Indian students understand right at the beginning? Then how important are academics, the grades, the English proficiency? You have talked about the Java language skills in the admission process. How it looks like.
So I would say, when we talk about admission requirements, we can break it down into two parts. One is for the bachelor studies and one is for the master studies.
Yeah.
So when we talk about bachelor studies, I think number one is the motivation.
Okay.
So Germany is not a place where everyone can be successful, to be honest, because you need certain language skills. You need to be very driven to achieve those skills. It's not that easy. I'll be honest with you. It's not that easy to learn, the language to a higher level. So motivation is key. So we work with a lot of students and parents, and my first question to them is, why they want to go to Germany, and have they thought about what are the challenges in the way? And if they haven't thought about it, then it's my job to tell them the challenges first.
Yeah.
Because everyone in the world will give you a rosy picture. Because it's our job to give the reality to the students and then see whether this is the right fit for them or not. So admission requirements, yes. In terms of the practical requirements, you need have completed your 12th when you're going for a bachelor's program. A new rule in Germany now, which has come this year itself from the APS, is that you need a 70% in your 12th in order to get the APS certificate, which is a mandatory requirement.
Grades
are important. So this is a very new development that has happened. So now if you don't have 70% in your 12th, you pretty much cannot think of Germany, because
what about the English proficiency?
English proficiency, if you're going for an English taught program, then you definitely need at least a B2, B1 or a B2. So at least a 6.5 if you talk about the IELTS. Then we have certain subject requirements. So depending on the course that you want to study for your bachelor's, you need to have done those subjects in your school. So for example, if you want to go for an engineering degree, then you need to have mathematics, physics. If you want to go for if you want to go for a business subject, it's always good to have commerce. So subject requirements are also there. The biggest and the most important requirement that parents and students need to be aware of is, if you complete your 12th from a CBSE or a state board in India, you need to have 1 year of foundation, which is called the preparatory year or the Studienkolleg. And only after that foundation year, you can then start a bachelor's at most universities. So this is a legal requirement in Germany.
So this is for the CBSE board or the state boards, or this requirement is for all the boards, including the IBs?
So this is for Indian boards. If you have an IB diploma, then you do not need a Studienkolleg.
Exactly.
Then you get exemption from that, because it's EU based. It's based in Switzerland, so they accept that as a direct entry requirement. So the IB is considered at par with the German high school system, which is called the German Abitur. So this is at par, so you don't need Studienkolleg. But all the students from Indian boards, they do need a Studienkolleg in order to complete that 13th year requirement. Because German system works as 13 years of high school, our system is 12 years of high school. So the Studienkolleg forms the bridge between the Indian system and the German system.
So I think it is majorly for all the European institutes. Or is it basically for Germany only?
This is only for Germany. Yes. So this is the German system, and that Studienkolleg also, then you need to decide which Studienkolleg you will take based on the program that you want to study. So for example, if you want to go for an engineering bachelor's, you need to do the T course, which is the technische course, which will teach you technical subjects. If you want to go for medicine, it will be the M course, which is medical. If you want to go for business economics, then you go for the W course, which is the Wirtschaft. So they have a few types of Studienkollegs that you can attend based on the bachelor's that you want to study. So yeah, we can come to this maybe a little more detail later on. Another requirement is the APS. So APS is a part of the German embassy. It's an office which is part of that. APS basically checks your previous education credentials. And once everything is checked and they know everything is authentic, they give you a certificate telling you that your academics are authentic, they have been checked. Plus they also tell you your eligibility, which level of education you are eligible, and what kind of entry you will get into Germany. For example, if you have completed 12th from CBSE and you apply for the APS, your APS will have a remark saying entry via Studienkolleg. So that means that they have checked everything and you are allowed to enter a bachelor's degree via a Studienkolleg, not without that. So based on your education level, they will give you the entry criteria which you can follow.
So having discussed all these admission processes here, what are the common mistakes that the students do while they are actually, filling the admission forms, going ahead with the processes, which can be easily avoided?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one is, I think the biggest mistake students and parents make is starting too late. So now Germany also works 1 year in advance pretty much, because there are certain test requirements, there are certain things that you need to take care of earlier on in the application process to prepare for the applications. So starting late is one of the biggest mistakes, which rushes up the process. You are not able to make all the requirements. So I always advise students to start as early as possible. If you want to go for bachelor's, you need to start the moment you start your 12th, so that you have 1 year to prepare everything. Another mistake the students make while applying is, I would say, not following the IELTS criteria, because a lot of times there's a myth which is spread online and through different videos that Germany accepts students without IELTS. But that is not true ultimately, because even if a university accepts you without IELTS, there are very few universities that would. But ultimately for the visa, you will have to take the IELTS, because IELTS is mandatory. English proficiency is mandatory for the visa.
For the job.
So we have to have a complete holistic view of the process. We can't just focus on only the applications part, and then later on in the visa part you face difficulties.
Exactly.
So a lot of students, they watch these videos, they have a lot of false information given to them. So they make that mistake of not planning for IELTS. So that is very, very important. Another very big mistake, in fact, is trying to escape the Studienkolleg. So trying to not have to do the foundation, finding shortcuts. Oh, this particular university says I don't need a Studienkolleg, you can get direct admission, and then not following the criteria which they require. So yes, there are some schools and universities that will give you the opportunity to skip the Studienkolleg, but that is based on stringent requirements like an entry test and etc. So a lot of times students are given false information, again, could be online by fellow students or by consultants, that you can find shortcuts. So I would really request students not to try to find shortcuts always,
and not to fall into these traps.
Yes, because there is a way. See, German is a very, very systematic, they have a very systematic approach. Black or white, they don't understand anything in the middle, That's what we've understood in the past 10 years we've been consulting for Germany. So they have very, very streamlined and clear systems. Please follow that. Don't try to find shortcuts. Don't try to save, time, money here and there, because ultimately you will not be able to make it. So genuinely, I, tell this to all my students. Sometimes the longer route is the right route, because that's the way they want you to come.
So,
yeah.
I mean, take your time, but reach your destination.
Exactly.
So now, once the student understand the admission pathway, the next big question becomes choosing the right university and the program. So how should students think about, difference between a public and a private universities in Germany? And, when we're talking about choosing the right academic path, which academic areas currently offer the strongest opportunities for the Indian students? Let's say engineering, business, data science, healthcare, or perhaps something else. How should the student decide about all these things?
Right. So I think the first thing when it comes to choosing the program, I would always say that it should be more driven by your vision, your passion, your interest, and your previous exposure to the subject. I think that is the most important. I mean, let's forget about what is in demand, what is not in demand, because all these things are cyclical. Today something is in demand, today we only hear about AI, tomorrow it might be something else. You never know where the world is heading. So you need to have a skill which you are happy with and which you think you can thrive in. So that's, I would say, number one in choosing the right program. Now, right university, or you mentioned public and private universities. So yeah, Germany has two kinds of universities in this kind of classification, is public and private. Public universities are funded by the government. Most public universities do not charge a fee. Private universities are self-funded and they do charge a fee, even though most of them are not-for-profit organizations, but they do charge a fee so that they can run the operations. Now, there's a huge myth going around, and we see this, students talking about this all the time, that all private universities are bad, I don't want to go to private universities. So I would say that's not the case. It's not about public or private, it's about which university you are talking about. It's about what is the recognition of that university, how old is the university, what does that university stand for. So some of the best schools in Germany are private. Some of the best schools globally in the US are private. So private and public should not be the deciding factor. It should be which is the right university for you, based on the program, based on their industry exposure, based on how connected they are with the real world and real world demand. So when you talk about another classification in Germany is the university, which is the Universität, or the universities of applied sciences, which is the Fachhochschule. So these are the two types of also universities in Germany. So a lot of times we also hear, parents saying, "Oh, I don't want my child to go to a university of applied sciences. They are not good." So, having a blanket statement like that, this is good, this is not good, it doesn't work, because we have to see what is the right fit for us.
Exactly.
So university, we have to understand the difference and then see which is the right path for me.
So these are the factors beyond the rankings the student should keep in mind while selecting a university.
One thing I would like to also clarify is Germany doesn't have a ranking system.
Okay.
So they do not have an official ranking. Any ranking you find online is probably an external ranking. It is not a German official ranking. So all German universities, recognized universities, are supposed to have very good quality and similar level of education. Now it's up to you whether you want to go into research, you want to go into a subject where you want to go into further research, then a university is better for you. If you want to go and start your career in Germany, you want to be connected with the industry, you want to have more personal development, then I would say a Fachhochschule, University of Applied Sciences, can also be a very good choice for you. So I think a lot of these factors come into play when we have to decide our universities. There is no simple statement like good or bad. I don't believe in that.
So, after selecting the course you're going into, selecting the university, another very important part of the conversation, especially for the Indian families here, is the financial planning. So there's a widespread perception that Germany is affordable. Realistically speaking, what should students and parents budget for when it comes to tuition and living expenses there? And what scholarship opportunities should students actively explore when they're planning for Germany?
Yeah. So yeah, that's very important because I think financial planning is key to your study abroad decision and your destination. So see, free education is again an absolute term. There is nothing which is free, to be honest, So we have to understand that fact. When we say Germany offers free education, it means tuition-free education, where the government is funding the education at public universities, so they are not charging you a fee. Now, even though they are not charging you a fee, there are some small contributions you have to make towards the university. They are known as semester contributions, which could range from, say, 300 to 500 euros per semester. So you're talking about, say, roughly 1,000 euros per year, which is, again, nothing, not too high of a cost, but yes, you have to know about it. Yes, you have to know about it, because that includes your regional transportation, it includes the facilities that you're using. So a lot of those things are included in that. So that's one thing. Secondly, I think instead of free, we say affordable. But then affordable is also subjective. Something which is affordable for me might not be affordable for you, or vice versa.
Yes, exactly.
So we have to be factual about it. If you go to a public university in Germany, yes, you do not have to pay a tuition fee. You have to pay a semester contribution, as I said, around 1,000 euros per year you can plan. And then you have to take care of your living expenses, of course.
Wow.
Now, whether you go to a public or a private university, the living expenses are the same. Legally, Germany you need to have approximately 12,000 euros for your living expenses for 1 year. So today's conversion, 12 to 12 and a half lakhs for 1 year. So that is the blocked account you have to create before you go, and which is required for the visa. So this is the requirement. So 12 and a half plus maybe 1 lakh for semester contribution, 13 and a half plus you have your travel expenses. Maybe you would travel to India maybe once a year, or things like that. So around 14, we can say 14 to 14 and a half lakhs. Usually, so that is the expense if you go to a public university as well. So you need to plan that. If you go to a private university, then you add the tuition fee, because they do charge a fee, which could be anywhere from 8,000 to 12,000 euros per year. So another 8 to 12 lakhs for that.
So when we are talking about the expenses, and the affordability, so how early should a family ideally begin planning financially for studying abroad?
So the earlier the better, I would say. Depends on whether you're looking for so public and private could have slightly different costs. So I think, and depending on your sources of income, do you already have a fund which is earmarked for the education? Then you don't have to worry about it. You just have that money set aside. Maybe you have some savings or some fixed deposits or some investments. If you are basing it on your regular income, then yes, I think based on what kind of income you have or the family has, then you need to start setting aside the funds for that. So I would say that would depend on each individual situation.
So of course, when we are saying that you should start as early as possible if you are planning to send your kids to study abroad, specifically when we're talking about Germany. So students today aren't only thinking about getting admitted into a university. They're also thinking what comes after graduation.
Right.
So how strong is the post-study landscape in Germany for international students?
Okay, so the post-study opportunities and the job situation in Germany is quite strong, I would say, based on a lot of different factors. One is the pure economic strength and the booming industries that Germany has. So as I spoke about earlier, manufacturing, automotive, IT and data science, healthcare, renewable energy. So all these are very, very high demand fields, number one.
These are the strongest employment opportunities that the student can get.
Yes, these are the strongest ones. Even general business services, events are very, very big in Germany, because if you see the biggest events or in any industry, you would find them happening in Germany. So that requires a large infrastructure, large demand for students and young professionals. So that's also a key area. Secondly, I would say the demographic factors. So Germany has an aging population. It is quite well known that they have a very old population in terms of age. And certain recent surveys have shown that Germany requires 400,000 skilled professionals every year to sustain its economy. So
that's a big number.
That's a very big number, and that is a factual number. So that is something that is really driving the opportunities, I would say. So Germany is a land of, I would say, long-term and sustainable opportunities. It's not like every student graduates and gets a job in the first day. But data shows that 75% of the students graduating, they are absorbed in a related skilled position within 7 to 8 months. And this is across the spectrum. When we talk about IT and computer science and data related services and positions, that's even higher, the percentage. So overall, if we see, it might take you in general terms, because students ask me this question all the time. So I always say it might take you some time, because it's always a struggle. Whenever you graduate in a foreign country, it's always difficult to land that first job. but you will get there. So I'm also talking from feedback from 10 years of our students going to Germany. And, I get constant feedback from them. So they might struggle to get a job maybe for 1 month, 2 months, even 6 months. It is possible. But eventually they do get absorbed, and we've had success stories, across the board. So I think students have to be patient, but they will land what they're looking for. And thirdly, I would say the whole aspect of Germany welcoming international professionals and international students. So they have a framework in place to accept international students, to integrate them into the society, and then to offer them long-term possibilities as well. This is being done through a post-study job search visa, which is 18 months. So when you graduate from a German institution, all the students are guaranteed 18 months of post-study job search visa, in which they can settle down, they can find the right opportunities, they can integrate, they can learn German. It is more than enough time for them to land a job and to then plan their future. So that is a very, very strong factor when it comes to a streamlined approach to not losing the students who have studied in Germany. They want you to stay there. And that's why this framework is in place. After 18 months or within 18 months, if you do find a job, which you will, I'm sure, then you can convert that into a work permit, and then you can gradually apply for the EU Blue Card.
So students should follow the process and just, trust in the process. You
Absolutely.
will eventually reach there where you're planning to reach.
Absolutely. You have to make the effort. See, even in India, it's not the easiest when you graduate. You have to make the effort. But ultimately, because of the high demand of skilled professionals, because of the government frameworks in place that allow you to stay there, it works out.
So earlier when we discussed about, having English proficiency when you're moving to Germany and knowing the German language, how important it is, not just academically we are talking, but for internships, part-time jobs, and when we're looking at long-term employability, how important it is.
So, number one, if you're going for an English taught program, you do not need German language knowledge to get admission to the program or to study the program. But to live and work in Germany, German language is absolutely essential. I cannot underline this enough. And German language is something that can make or break your career path in Germany. So,
and I guess it is for all the study destinations, whether you're moving to Germany, whether you're moving to Finland. If you know the language, you know the people, you know the culture, and you can easily adjust there.
Absolutely. So that is very, very important. So you need to see your life outside the classroom. When you go to, for job interviews, when you apply to German companies, of course, they would expect you to speak some German. The better your German, the higher your opportunities, the more opportunities you will have. That is a constant feedback we get from our students. Students who are not successful, 99% of the times, the reason is that they never paid attention to German language. So it is very, very important. So I always advise my students, the moment you start thinking about going to Germany, start learning German, because by the time you get there, if you have, say, 2 levels done, completed already, like A1 and A2, according to the European framework of languages, you will find yourself much more comfortable, much more confident, and you will get many more opportunities, whether it's for part-time employment, whether it's for full-time employment. So start learning in India itself. Don't wait to reach Germany to start learning German.
Because there's also a personal journey apart from the academic careers, and there's a personal journey of adapting to a new environment completely. So you have to make the effort.
Absolutely.
To fit in.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about fitting in, what cultural or academic adjustments do Indian students have to do? What are the most commonly faced problems when they first arrive in Germany?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because there's such a difference when it comes to understanding, when it comes to personalities, when it comes to, the day-to-day life, when we compare India and Germany, the way Indians operate, the way Germans operate. So I think an early understanding of that is very, very important. One thing you can do is, before you go, expose yourself to, local German media, and everything is available online these days. Watch some daily live videos, maybe of German students, or what's it like on campus and things like that. So that's for a general understanding. Majorly a few points which are very, very important. So Germans are very, very particular about punctuality, as they're famous for it. So there's a German saying which says, if you can't be on time, be early.
And it is the opposite to Indians.
So we sometimes don't understand that and don't abide by it. So it is very important when you're in Germany to be punctual, because that will really make or break your impression on the other person, and that goes a long way. Secondly, mean what you say, and don't say what you don't mean. So when we talk about day-to-day conversations, understanding, when the German mindset is very binary, I would say, 0 or 1. There's nothing between 0 and 1. There's black or white. There's no gray. And unfortunately, we as Indians have grown up in an environment of gray. It's a lot of gray. So a lot of times we say yes to something which we have no intention of doing.
Exactly.
And the opposite as well. So when you talk to maybe a German, I have noticed this in my years of interacting with so many German people with universities and things like that. So if they want to say no, they will say no, whether you like it or not.
Right.
And sometimes we are taken aback.
Maybe.
And, oh my God, this person has just said no to me on my face. That's so rude. But for them, that's not rude. That's just being honest.
Being honest, being truthful to what
if they can do something, they will say, yes, I can do it. If they can't do something, they will say, I'm sorry, I can't do it. But we are in the habit of saying yes to everything, and then not getting anything done.
Or a maybe would work.
Yes. So agreeing to everything doesn't help you in the long run. So be very clear about what about your yeses and nos, and you don't have to say yes to everything. So yeah, these are few etiquettes when you are talking to someone, when you are entering a room. Always a sorry or a thank you can go a very long way. Sometimes we're not used to saying a lot of that here. So I think that is very, very important. And I would say, yes, a very important thing that we miss out on is being patient and active listening. So, we are sometimes as a culture, we are always in a hurry to get our point across. And the moment that's done, we want to just finish the conversation, we want to leave, we want to get on. But you would realize that when you're talking to Germans, they pay a lot of attention to what you're saying, and they expect the same from you. So when someone's talking, give them that respect to complete and, gradually mold the conversation, rather than being absolutely abrupt. Okay, thank you very much, bye-bye. It's and wait for your turn. So patience is something that Germany really teaches you well. You have to wait for your turn, whether it's when you're in a queue or whether you're talking to someone, patience goes a long way.
So we can imagine the cultural shock that the students won't get when they're right there. Yeah,
that's true.
So when we are looking ahead, let's say 5 years, so do you believe Germany will remain one of the most strategic destinations for Indian students?
I would say in the next 5 years, definitely yes. I would say for the next 10 to 15 years, we are looking at a very interesting opportunity in Germany and in Europe. So when I say Germany, I also talk a little bit about Europe, because when you have a student visa for Germany or for other European Schengen states, you do have the access to other countries as well for a short-term stay, for exploring opportunities. So I would say Europe as a destination. If you're in Germany, we can consider Europe as a destination as well, which has a lot of promise.
So beyond Germany, what other European countries would you advise that Indian student should start, paying closer attention to?
I think France is something which has again great opportunities for students. They are very welcoming. You students must have seen, the recent developments that President Macron comes and whenever he's in India and he meets our Prime Minister as well. They always talk about education. They always talk about welcoming more Indian students. They have targets to welcome 30,000 students by 2030. So I think the policy framework is in the right direction. That is a big plus when it comes to France, because along with the universities and the quality of education, you need that the framework to be there in order to be able to stay in that country. Otherwise, legally, you will not be able to do much. So that's, I think France is very promising. Apart from that, I would say affordable destinations like Poland and Hungary, they are becoming very, very significant because you can study in these countries at a fraction of the cost, even lower than Germany. So that is sometimes something that students and parents miss out on. So you can literally study at a university in Poland, for example, with a tuition fee of 2.5 lakhs per year, which is some less than most of Indian private universities.
Difference.
So, and the economies are really growing at a good speed. So Poland is now already number 20 in the world. For being a small country, that's a great achievement, and they're doing the right things. And they're welcoming, and the reason is because they're welcoming a lot of companies, a lot of business, and a lot of investment because of the ease of doing business and also because of the low cost of doing business. So because of the cost of living is much lower than Western Europe, a lot of interest is coming from all over the world. So that's why
Finland also fall into the same line?
Yes. Finland is a very interesting destination. Also the other Nordic countries like Sweden, Norway, I would say. So they offer excellent opportunities for students because, again, they also need skilled professionals. They can also feel it in the economy, and they have, again, frameworks and policies in place to welcome skilled professionals and to make them stay back. So Finland also offers 2 years of post-study job search visa, in fact. So that's a long time, even longer than Germany. And they're very good with especially courses in computer science, AI, cybersecurity, data science, business analytics. So very much with the, they call it ICT, information and communication technologies. They're very much on that. So they have good opportunities for that. So yeah, these are some countries. Netherlands is also a very good option because they have some of the best universities ranked globally.
So is it a good option for the good students too?
Yes, it's a very good option. However, the funding part might be a little different because in Netherlands, even the public universities, they do charge a fee, which could be anywhere from 10 to 15 lakhs a year. So that part needs to be planned accordingly.
So the affordability part comes in here.
Yes.
Okay. So let's just lighten things a bit and let's have a quick rapid fire with you. So one word to describe Germany as a study destination.
Potential.
Okay. That's a good answer, I would say. So most underrated country in Europe for Indian students.
I would say Poland.
So grades or profile, which matters more today?
When it comes to different countries, I think that answer would be different. But I would say for Germany, it's grades.
And one myth students should stop believing about studying in Europe. It's a big no-no.
That's a good one. I need to think about it. Myth about Europe. Maybe that it's free.
Free, yeah. I think the
I think
affordability part.
that's the biggest myth. Yes, it is affordable, but it's not free. So you need to plan your finances.
Exactly. So, and finally, looking ahead as we are here, what do you think will define the next generation of Indian students choosing higher education in Europe? Is it the ambition, the affordability, global mobility, or something else?
I think for the next generation, flexibility is extremely important. ROI and a skill-based approach and an outcome-based approach. So I think that is the most important for the next generation. They don't want to follow the crowd. The next generation is very, very individualistic. So they would want programs which absolutely cater to them, whether they are in a full-time on-campus format or they are in a hybrid format. So the formats would matter also, because they would want flexibility in their day-to-day life. They would want to maybe have a side hustle. They would not like to restrict themselves to a conventional education system. I think that's one of the major things that would define their choices. And also, I think it will be more of a skill-based approach rather than the traditional legacy ranking-based approach. So what we are seeing now is students are much happier going for a very cutting-edge program at, say, a university in Germany or Poland or Finland, which is not very well known, as compared to going to a very prestigious brand name in the UK, but not having the right opportunities after that, or not having that kind of a program that fits them. So I think the program and the skills that they can get from the program will become very, very important.
Fine. And so thank you, Sahil. It's been very insightful and practical conversation with you. And I hope the students who are looking to study abroad and the parents who are looking to sending their kids abroad to study, whether it's in Europe, whether it's in Germany, you can have insightful and practical outlook after watching this podcast. And to everyone listening, thank you for watching us. Thank you for listening to us. And if we have helped us clear out your doubts, do feel free to send us the message. If you want to talk to Mr. Sahil, talk to our team, and exploring your next steps. Until then, thank you for joining us for Beyond Waters.